Vamos a llamar este video el escándalo del Washington Post. Quiero empezar este programa diciendo de que el Washington Post no va a apoyar a ningún candidato presidencial. Esto no se había visto desde hace mucho tiempo. Esto no es decisión de los empleados a quienes van a respaldar, sino por decisión del dueño del periódico. Estamos hablando del Jeff Bezos, el dueño de Amazon. La razón de por qué el dueño de Amazon ha decidido no meterse en la política es porque sabe que Donald Trump va a ganar las elecciones y si apoya a Kamala Harris va a ser un dolor de cabeza donde quizás pueda perder más audiencia de lo que está perdiendo actualmente los medios establecidos. También la revista LA, Los Ángeles, se ha alejado de la política, se permanece neutral, no quiere apoyar a ningún candidato presidencial. ¿Qué quiere decir esto, señores? Que hay una falta de confianza. Hay una falta de confianza por parte de Kamala Harris, de los medios de comunicación que no quieren apoyar a Kamala Harris porque quieren evitarse cualquier panorama que podría afectarles si Donald Trump gana las elecciones. Los sindicatos tampoco están apoyando a Kamala Harris. Esto no se había visto desde más de una década. Entonces, ¿qué significa? Que quieren evitar más dolores de cabeza si gana Trump y respaldan a Kamala Harris, ya que primeramente Kamala Harris no la conoce nadie, o sea, Kamala tiene aproximadamente 4 meses haciendo campaña presidencial, comparado a Donald Trump que todo el mundo conoce quién es Donald Trump. Entonces, esa es la diferencia entre Kamala y Donald Trump. Ok, este es el artículo, dice así, el Washington Post dice que no respaldará a ningún candidato para presidente. Por primera vez en 40 años, el Consejo Editorial del Washington Post anunció el viernes que no respaldará la elección presidencial de este año, ni en futuras elecciones presidenciales. La decisión, 11 días antes de una elección que la mayoría de las encuestas muestran como demasiado reñidas, marca la segunda vez esta semana que una importante organización de medios de comunicación se niegan a emitir un respaldo en la carrera presidencial entre Donald Trump y Kamala. Después de años de hacer tales respaldos, a principio de esta semana, el multimillonario propietario de Los Angeles Times LA también bloqueó el respaldo planificado a Kamala Harris, lo que provocó la dimisión del editorial del periódico. El personal de la página editorial del Washington Post había redactado un respaldo a Kamala, pero aún no se había publicado porque estaban esperando la autorización del dueño de Amazon, que es el dueño de esta revista o de esta empresa periodística. Según fuentes informadas sobre la secuencia de eventos que hablaron bajo condición de anonimato, porque no estaban autorizadas a hablar públicamente. La decisión de no publicar fue tomada por el mismísimo propietario del Post, el fundador de Amazon, Jeff Bezos, según las mismas fuentes. Esto es cobardía, dice el periódico, un momento de oscuridad que dejará a la democracia como una víctima. Donald Trump celebrará esto como una invitación a intimidar más al propietario de Post, Jeff Bezos. Entonces, los empleados del Washington Post están diciendo en este momento que básicamente Jeff está siendo intimidado por Donald Trump, pero me parece que estos medios de la izquierda quieren evitarse los dolores de cabeza porque saben que Donald Trump ganará las elecciones. También la revista LA, la decisión del propietario del LA de no respaldar la carrera presidencial provoca renuncias y preguntas. La decisión del propietario de Los Angeles Times de no respaldar la carrera presidencial del 2024, después del que el consejo editorial del periódico propusiera respaldar a Kamala, ha creado una tempestad provocando que 3 miembros del consejo dimitieran y provocaran que miles de lectores cancelaran su suscripción. Ahora bien, el director general del Washington Post renunció después de que el periódico se negara a respaldar al candidato presidencial Kamala Harris. La CNN le ha hecho una entrevista al director o al director editor de la revista Washington Post de la razón de por qué dimitió al periódico. Vamos a escuchar.
The Washington Post is in turmoil tonight after the publisher announced that the newspaper will not endorse a candidate for president. That's the first time they have not done so in 36 years of presidential elections. The Post itself reporting that the decision came from the paper's owner, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Now, the editorial page had drafted an endorsement of Kamala Harris before the decision was made, according to a source, and the fallout has been immediate. Washington Post editor-at-large Robert Kagan resigning from the newspaper tonight, others possibly to follow. There are people canceling their subscriptions. I've heard, some of them, they're using that as a way to express their feelings. Others are threatening to do so. Just moments ago, 8 Washington Post columnists, including David Ignatius, Ruth Marcus, Eugene Robinson, nationally known names, of course, speaking out and calling the decision, quote, a terrible mistake and a, quote, abandonment of the fundamental editorial convictions of the newspaper that we love. Robert Kagan is out front, as I said, the just resigned editor-at-large of the Washington Post, also author of Rebellion, How Anti-Liberalism is Tearing America Apart Again. Bob, I have so much to ask you. I know it's emotionally, mentally, in every way, an incredibly difficult day and moment for you. So you made this decision to resign. Tell me how you came to that decision, what got you over the line?
Well, it was a pretty easy decision. This is obviously an effort by Jeff Bezos to curry favor with Donald Trump in anticipation of his possible victory. Trump has threatened to go after Bezos's business. Bezos runs one of the largest companies in America. They have tremendously intricate relations with the federal government. They depend on the federal government. And Trump has made it clear that he will attack media organizations that are critical of him. He's threatened to take away CBS's license. And this is clearly an effort by Bezos to try to get on Trump's good side in advance of his presidency. So if we want to know how Trump is going to stifle the free press in the United States, this is the answer. This is how it's going to happen, especially when the media is owned by corporate titans who have a lot to lose if Trump is angry at them.
Obviously, the Los Angeles Times going through this as well. But when you say clearly an effort by Bezos to curry favor with Trump or because of his fear of Trump, you just laid out all your reasons there. I'm just wondering, Robert, do you know from meetings you've had, things you've heard today, and your capacity as reporting, do you know any more specifics, or is that just your belief based on things that have been said in the past?
No, I mean, it's the latter. I've read what you've read. That's all I know. I don't have any inside information. But look, Trump did threaten Bezos in the past. He talked about, taxing Amazon more heavily and other things. And so the Post has had no trouble endorsing presidential candidates up until now. And by the way, this argument that they're making that somehow they want to become above it all on this thing, they've endorsed all kinds of candidates in this election season. They endorsed the Democratic nominee in Maryland. They've endorsed other Democratic nominees. So is it just only in the race that Donald Trump happens to be running in that they've decided not to endorse? It's absurd. So I think we understand. I think anybody who has got a sensible understanding of the situation knows why this happened.
All right. So to the point that you're raising, that they've endorsed other candidates this cycle, I'll share with everybody, obviously, what you know, which is Will Lewis, your former publisher's explanation. So he's saying this is a return to the paper's roots. That's how he's clarifying it. And the way that they're putting this out there is Washington Post is founded in 1877. It did not endorse a presidential candidate until 1976. And then chose not to endorse in 1988. So he continued to say, we see it as consistent with the values the Post has always stood for and what we hope for in a leader: character and courage and service to the American ethic, veneration of the rule of law, and respect for human freedom in all its aspects. Is there anything real in that, or do you think that that is just a whole load of garbage?
What you just said. Look, it's absurd. They have to say something. What are they going to say? We are in fact bending the knee to Donald Trump because we're afraid of what he'll do. They're not going to say that. Obviously, they're going to say this. But look, the editorial page, not just the Washington Post as a news organization, but the editorial page has been laying out for almost 8 years arguments as to why Donald Trump is not only the wrong candidate, but an actual threat to American democracy. The editorial page has been doing this. So, for them to decide that this is the election that they're going to sit out when they have made it very clear, the editorial page, that Trump represents a threat to democracy.
Yeah.
Look, there's no explanation other than the most obvious one. This is a simple question with a simple answer.
There was one question I wanted to ask you, Robert, as you think through this, and that is in the sense of, we live in this world that's just so polarized and so fractured and so angry. And is there anything, and I'm not saying this is the argument they're making, but is there anything to be said for if well-known, established, venerated institutions like the Washington Post or the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times is not yet endorsed. I don't know what will happen there. But that if they don't endorse, that maybe in the future, in a world where half of this country is going to vote for Donald Trump and half of this country is going to vote for Kamala Harris, that there might be a future for an institution like the Washington Post to reach both sides, as opposed to being seen as only a liberal, more democratic newspaper. Is there anything for you intellectually in that?
No, because, everybody knows or should know that the editorial page of every newspaper is separate from the news coverage. I don't think the Washington Post thinks it acts like a liberal newspaper. I know people who are critical of the Post may think that, but it isn't. It's trying to deliver the news. The editorial page has a different function. The editorial page presents opinions on a lot of issues. They tell Americans what they think about all kinds of things that Americans should be doing. And no one has ever thought that somehow that gets in the way of the Washington Post doing its job as a news organization. So, everybody can come up with all kinds of reasons why they're doing this, but I think we should just see clearly that this is the beginning of how Trump is going to control the media, especially that media that is controlled by corporate interests, because all of corporate America has been now bending the knee to Trump. We saw Jamie Dimon do this back in January at Davos, where he decided to say out of the blue that Trump is right about some things. Corporate leaders want to make sure that they're not at odds with a president who does threaten them if they behave badly.
All right, so just a couple things to understand where we are, because I think a lot of people want to know. Do you expect more resignations? I mean, I know your friends, your colleagues, Ruth Marcus, David Ignatius, have put out a statement saying that they don't support this, but do you think more people are going to resign?
I have no idea, and everybody has to make their own decisions about this thing. It's a little easier for me to resign than for others, so I don't presume to judge what others do, and we'll just have to see.
Now, in terms of the subscriptions, right? That's the kind of outrage that's out there right away. People canceling their subscriptions to the Washington Post. If people feel strongly, you can understand why they do that. That's the lever they have to pull. But do you think that's the right lever, given what you're saying and how you see this happening? Or do you think people should be actually looking at their Amazon subscriptions, right? I mean, that of course is the company for Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, and by the way, as much as the Post would like to keep up its subscriptions, as much as Bezos would like to see the Post keep up its subscriptions, the amount of money that Bezos has at stake at the Post is a tiny fraction of the money that he has at stake with Amazon.
Right.
And that's why he's decided to weigh his stake in Amazon ahead of his interest as the owner of a major newspaper, and that's a shame. Again. People can do what they want, but let's at least understand what's happening, and let's understand what a warning this is for the future, because, people worry about what Donald Trump may or may not do, but here is a sort of anticipatory capitulation on the part of a major media organization, and that is before he's even president. So imagine what it's going to be like when he is president and does wield enormous power over how how particular corporations do in this country.
All right, well, Robert, I appreciate your time. I know it's a difficult day for you. You said the decision was not difficult, but nonetheless, I know that the moment is for you incredibly so. So thanks so much.
Entonces, son las declaraciones de Robert Kagan, el jefe de la editorial del Washington Post, que acaba de renunciar tras la decisión del dueño de Amazon. El director de la editorial del Washington Post, que están viendo en pantalla, acaba de decir que se debe a que Jess Benson teme que Donald Trump vaya en contra de sus negocios. O sea, él está diciendo de que por culpa de que Donald Trump está supuestamente amenazando a Jeff Benson de que si apoya a Kamala Harris por parte de esta editorial del Washington Post, podría tener consecuencias si gana las elecciones. Las dos veces en que el Washington Post no ha respaldado a candidatos presidenciales ha sido en 1976 y 1988. Entonces, esto se cumpliría más de 30 años desde que no se respaldaba a ningún candidato presidencial porque el medio de comunicación quiere permanecer neutral en este preciso instante porque, como dice un dicho, cuando el río suena es porque piedras trae. Entonces, estas son las declaraciones el ex director del Washington Post que acaba de renunciar hace unas horas tras la decisión del dueño de Amazon de no respaldar a ningún candidato presidencial. Más allá de todo eso, están molestos porque aparentemente ya había un artículo preparado, listo para publicarse, apoyando a Kamala Harris. Solamente estaban esperando la decisión del dueño de Amazon, pero por supuesto no fue autorizado y efectivamente estas personas liberales están molestas. Ahora bien, antes de terminar con este video, yo te invito a que te suscribas a este canal porque te aseguro que a partir de hoy hasta el 5 de noviembre y posterior, 5 de noviembre, va a haber muchas noticias importantes que ustedes tienen que saber y estaré haciendo cobertura 24/7 de información importante y relevante para todos ustedes. Nos vemos amigos en unas horas con un siguiente episodio para todos y no olvides compartir este video en las redes sociales. Hasta luego, cuídense mucho.